What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content that I'm uploading onto my channel, then feel free to subscribe, and you can also offer suggestions on topics and characters and storylines and whatnot that we can have discussions on later on in this channel. Alright, so the cool thing about Justice League versus Suicide Squad is that this story is very structured, and in fact, Justice League issue number 12 and Suicide Squad issue number 9 are actually preludes. Justice League number 12 covers really like the new origin of Maxwell Lord. Well, it really kind of fills in the gaps. I mean, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but it's basically taking all the pre-New 52 Maxwell Lord stuff with regards to like the Checkmate organization and all that kind of stuff, and it blends it in with like the New 52 landscape, and it does it really, really well. But for this story, the Suicide Squad, this is so cool because I feel like the way this story is written by Rob Williams is that it really just like, it highlights how dark Amanda Waller is. Not only that, it's going to show us why this group is the original Suicide Squad. And I'm kind of glad this was written because when I first jumped into Justice League versus Suicide Squad number 1, I was like, okay, how did they become the Suicide Squad? That was the question that I had. And I was really hoping that the tie-in would cover that. And I'm glad I was right about this. But the way this is done, the team is effectively led by Rustam. Now, Rustam, or I guess Rustam, I'm not really sure exactly how you would pronounce that. But the way he was originally introduced in DC Comics was that he was like an enemy of the Suicide Squad. But as far as I'm aware, and as far as I've been able to dig, and I've dug long and hard, I am not able to really find anything on like his origin story in terms of why he was an enemy of the Suicide Squad. It's just that somewhere along the line, after the Suicide Squad was reinvented under John Ostrander after Crisis on Infinite Earths, Rick Flag led the team and they just ran into Rustam and they just fought for a while. And so what seems to be happening here with regards to Rob Williams' writing is it seems to be just as much going through and retconning as it is, providing a little bit of history here, kind of tapping into the original things. Now, that's really the basis behind Justice League versus Suicide Squad in a lot of ways. I mean, this Suicide Squad right here, Suicide Zero, this team never existed before. This is the first time we're ever seeing them. And so what DC's doing is retconning it. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, retcon stands for retroactive continuity. And what it means is something just like this. Chronologically, in terms of DC's publication history, this Suicide Squad never exists. But what Rob Williams is saying is that before the original Suicide Squad that you read about, whether you're reading the comics or you're going through, Wikipedia or what have you, this team existed. Nobody ever knew about it. And so that's kind of the cool thing here. But all these people are really kind of brought in here. I mean, Lobo, Emerald, Empress, Cyclotron, Johnny Sorrow, Dr. Polaris, they're all brought here for the purpose of carrying out a mission according to Amanda Waller. This is her first foray into this. And the problem here is that Amanda Waller basically presents them with an incentive-based scenario. And that's the difference with regards to the main Suicide Squad and the Suicide Squad here. This is really just kind of a team that's formed through bribery. I mean, it's really Amanda Waller. She quite literally says, I will give you your heart's desire if you carry out the mission as I ask you to. Now, of course, we'll find out what this mission is here in a second. But in response, I mean, we're talking about Lobo being paid money. We're talking about Johnny Sorrow being given people to kill. I mean, it's all kinds of crazy things as opposed to like the traditional Suicide Squad where Amanda Waller is basically like, hey, if you go out here and do these missions, then life will be a little bit easier for you. You're not going to get your heart's desire. We'll just make life a little bit easier. Now, the mission itself is really like an allegory to North Korea as far as I'm aware. Young Sung is a guy that doesn't exist. I mean, I was kind of poking around because there's been a few times where I've been like, and then this person who existed in the real world, but of course the Rob Corps is like, no, Rob, that's actually wrong. It's important that I tell you that you're wrong. Which is kind of funny to me. It cracks me out. But nonetheless, this is basically just a crazy guy. I mean, it's a dude who just exists, in his own country. He's the leader of the country and he's testing his own weapons. And it's really the idea that he possesses the potential to implement a massive amount of destruction in the United States, quite literally obliterating California. Now, that was the basis and that still remains the basis behind the Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad carries out missions that are basically suicidal so that if any of them die, they're just easily replaceable. They're villains that no one would miss, villains that nobody really cares about. There's no one that, no one that's tied to their stories. They're basically just disposable people. Now, the way this is done is Amanda Waller says, there are these metahumans, in this territory called the Young Sun Gods. But in her mind, she doesn't have, or at least the Suicide Squad doesn't have all the information. That like no one really knows the information. In fact, Amanda Waller doesn't really have it all. Instead, all they know is that there are just these Young Sun Gods. No one really has any idea what's going on with them. The issue is that when the Suicide Squad gets in there, they're told, kill the leader, kill the Young Sun Gods, destroy the weapon that they're using, call it a day, get out of there and come back. The problem is when they get through there, for every god they kill, 1,000 people die. And no one knows why. I mean, Amanda Waller's like, what the hell is going on right now? People are starting to freak out. Not only that, when she begins to realize that there would be catastrophic effects, she starts to call them back. Now, an important thing to keep in mind here is that Amanda Waller is she's a heartless bitch. There's no other way to say it. And we love that about her. That's why we love Amanda Waller, because she's ruthless. I mean, she's cold and ruthless. And so when she calls back the Suicide Squad, it's not because she's like, oh my goodness, all these people are dying. How terrible. She's just like, this would create a firestorm for me for the Suicide Squad. It would create so many issues because remember, the Suicide Squad is supposed to be a Black Ops team. They're supposed to be under the radar. No one is really supposed to know about them, or at least their actions are not supposed to be overt. And so because of that, if they go into a country and for every Yang Sun god they kill, 1,000 people die, thousands of people are going to die, and someone's going to notice that. And so because of this, the Suicide Squad, the fact that they're not controllable, basically say, no, we're finishing the mission. Now, Rustin had told Amanda Waller about this. He said, look, the guys you have here, their loyalty is only with whatever you can pay them. And so their loyalty is not to you. Their loyalty is not to the mission. Their loyalty is to the reward. And so if you say, come back and I'm not going to give you the reward, they're going to complete the mission because they want their money or they want whatever it is that was promised to them. And that's exactly what the Suicide Squad does. They go through Johnny Sorrow, everybody, they just start killing off these Yang Sun gods and all these people start dying. And so what they eventually do is they essentially come across the weapon that was creating these gods. And what we learn is that it was basically using life energy, that it was tapping into the brain waves, the brain patterns of everybody, in Yang Sun to essentially power these gods. And so because of that, whenever it was that they killed a Yang Sun god, it basically cut off that person's brain waves. It basically just shut their brain down is really what it did. And so what happens here is Amanda Waller says, look, you guys need to leave, you guys need to go. And initially they're like, okay, fine, then I guess maybe we could take off or we could just destroy the weapon. Now, this is when Cyclotron steps in. Now, the funny thing about Cyclotron is he's an old school DC character. He's almost like, he's like Hawkeye in terms of his circumstances, in the sense that he was just kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time. The difference is that the Hawkeye eventually became a good guy. Cyclotron didn't. He just kind of stayed a bad guy, but he never really wanted to be a bad guy. The issue with this character though, and as far as I've been able to tell, is that there's virtually nothing on this guy. I mean, this dude is almost non-existent. And what this does is it allows Rob Williams to basically just do whatever he wants with his character. And that's usually how it works in comic books. When a writer comes along and they grab a character that has almost no involvement in the DC landscape whatsoever, or their involvement is marginal, then it basically allows the writer to do whatever they want to, because there's just these huge gaps in their publication history where no one knew what they were doing. And so it was really easy for Rob Williams to come along and say, well, let's just grab this guy. Now, the reason why he grabbed Cyclotron was that because, Cyclotron was in and of himself just an atomic bomb. That's basically what he is. He's powered by atomic energy. Not only that, he's a genius, when it comes to all these different forms of science. And so what he says is, hey, look guys, if this thing was being made, or this machine was being used to manipulate the brain patterns of Yang Sun citizens for the purpose of basically creating these Yang Sun gods, giving like the actual power to these Yang Sun gods so they can do whatever they want to, well then we can do the exact same thing, except we can expand its capabilities and we can literally just immerse the world. And then suddenly we have just these Yang Sun gods that are on this massive level of power, and they can take out, all these different superheroes, and they can basically allow us to rule everything. Now, of course, the response of the Suicide Squad is, well, hell, why not? I mean, we got this far, we might as well do it. Now, not everyone's on board. I mean, of course, you got Lobo, who just wants to destroy stuff, so he's like, no, I'm not really on board with this, and some of them actually end up bailing out for a time while others stay behind. The issue is that Amanda Waller goes to Lobo, communicating to him, and says, look, you need to kill Cyclotron. Now, on the surface, the idea seems to be that Cyclotron is the one that can essentially, manipulate this machine, or he's the one controlling it, that if they kill Cyclotron, it'll sort of bring everything back to normal. The problem with this is that once Lobo goes in there, while Cyclotron tries to talk him out of it, Lobo eventually just kills him anyway, because in his mind, a deal's a deal. Now, this all really kind of goes back to the idea of Lobo. Yeah, he's a mass murderer. Yeah, he's crazy as hell, but honor is one of the more important things to him. And so he says, look, I made a deal. I made a promise. I basically made a bargain with somebody. You can't offer me anything that'll get me to break that bargain. All you're doing is just pleading for your life. It's time for you to die. The problem with this is that Rustin responds and says, why did you do that? And he's like, well, I mean, Amanda Waller wanted me to, she told me that she'd pay me to do so, and Rustin says, dude, the guy was basically an atomic bomb. He was a safety device, that if you guys run off and you do something stupid, that with you being the easiest person to manipulate because all you want is money, plus you're a person that's virtually indestructible when it comes to atomic bombs, like, all she has to do is just agree to pay you more, and then you'll kill him, basically detonating an atomic bomb. And that's exactly what happens. This atomic energy of cyclotron just begins to essentially detonate, and it seems as though it wipes out the entirety of the Suicide Squad as it's seen here. Now, this is why I say Amanda Waller is so ruthless, because what she does is she says, I didn't like the way things turned out, but in the end, the Suicide Squad did their job. For the most part, their bodies aren't physically destroyed. They're there. They're basically being held in stasis. But she says they did their job. Now, the reason why these people are alive is because they're basically either they're tied into mysticism, they're tied into magic, they have extremely high durability. I mean, there was a reason why they were chosen, so that if things went to pot and something like this happened, Amanda Waller could basically just kind of sweep them under the rug, call it off, and then go back, reinvent the Suicide Squad team, and possibly pluck one or two of them out of stasis and then throw them back onto a team again with a new charter, with a new mindset on how they function. But it's basically her just kind of keeping things under control, keeping things under wraps. But in the end, this is why she's so cold-blooded, is she says, yeah, I mean, we set off a nuclear bomb, we wiped out a huge portion of the city. Those individuals who were alive in that area, it doesn't matter, they're all dead. The mission was a success. And that's all she cares about. For her, it's just like the mission was a success. Everything else is just details. We'll develop a cover story. We'll make up some reason. We'll just say, well, they were testing a nuclear bomb and it went bad and it all blew up and that was it. And it's it's cold-blooded. But this is the prelude to Justice League versus Suicide Squad. What this will do is segue directly into Justice League versus Suicide Squad #1. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tie this. I'm going to take the Justice League versus Suicide Squad playlist or videos, and I'm just going to throw those into the DC Rebirth playlist as a whole, which, by the way, if you guys don't know about that, you'll find the playlist down in the description. It's all the DC Rebirth stuff, just organized by character. And I'm going to kind of throw it all together. That way it creates just one cohesive story. But if you guys are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like. And yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.